When an officer accustomed to bending the rules finds himself pulling over someone who writes them, a simple traffic stop spirals into a calculated setup. However, this crooked cop targeted the wrong individual. Prepare for a legendary display of cosmic retribution. The illuminated display within the Oak Haven County Sheriff's cruiser read 1:14 in the morning. The tranquil residential avenues of Oak Haven, an exclusive and predominantly affluent Caucasian community on the outskirts of the city, lay in absolute stillness. At the helm sat Sergeant Mitchell Hayes, a 15-year veteran of the force whose reputation was as varied as the people encountered. His superiors saw him as a diligent officer who artificially deflated local crime figures, while those from disadvantaged communities passing through his jurisdiction viewed him as a source of dread, a petty and biased autocrat who wielded his authority without restraint. Beside him, in the passenger seat, was Deputy Tyler Dunn, a recent Academy graduate, barely 23, and still holding an innocent belief in the unblemished integrity of the law. Dunn felt a palpable unease. He had been partnered with Hayes for 3 weeks, and the senior officer's modus operandi deeply disturbed him. Hayes didn't enforce the law. He pursued his prey. "Quiet night, Mitch," Dunn murmured, his gaze drifting over the meticulously kept lawns and stately oak trees. "Too quiet," Hayes grunted, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. "Means the undesirables are lurking where they shouldn't be." Approximately 1 mile onward, Arthur Sterling guided his midnight blue Mercedes-Benz S-Class along the curving suburban artery. At 58 years of age, Arthur possessed an air of profound dignity and an exceptionally sharp intellect. His early career had been dedicated to the vigorous practice of civil rights law before his appointment to the federal bench. Now he was the esteemed Honorable Arthur Sterling, a widely respected United States District Judge. He was utterly fatigued. He had just departed a demanding 5-hour charity gala in the city and yearned only for the simple comfort of removing his formal attire and retiring to his own bed. As the Mercedes silently glided past the concealed sheriff's vehicle, Hayes's attention was immediately captured by the luxurious automobile. He swiftly accelerated, emerging from the shadows to follow the Mercedes. "What have we got?" Dunn inquired, bracing himself as the cruiser picked up speed. "High-end, $100,000 vehicle at least," Hayes sneered, narrowing his eyes through the windshield. He entered the license plate into his mobile data terminal. The registration appeared valid. No outstanding warrants, registered to an Arthur Sterling at an Oak Haven address, yet Hayes wasn't focused on the clean record. His attention was fixed on the driver's side mirror. Beneath the soft amber glow of the streetlights, he caught a fleeting glimpse of the driver. A black man, nearing 60. "Take a look at this fellow," Hayes muttered, an all-too-familiar ugly smirk contorting his features. "Out at 1 in the morning in Oak Haven, likely distributing illicit substances for the cartels. They favor placing their top personnel in expensive suits and foreign automobiles." "Mitch, the plates are clean," Dunn pointed out hesitantly. "Registered to an address 2 miles from here." "Doesn't signify a thing, kid," Hayes snapped. He activated the flashing red and blue lights. "Let's give him a lesson on our local customs." "See him drift toward the yellow line? That's a failure to maintain lane discipline." Within the Mercedes, Arthur sighed as the dazzling lights flooded his rearview mirror. He had not touched the yellow line. His driving had been impeccable. Decades within the legal framework had thoroughly schooled him in the nature of these late-night encounters, particularly for a black man alone on a deserted road. He engaged his turn signal, smoothly maneuvered into a brightly lit gas station parking area, shifted into park, silenced the engine, and placed both hands flat upon the steering wheel. Hayes approached the driver's side, his hand resting heavily on the grip of his sidearm, a tactic of intimidation he employed with unwavering regularity. Dunn walked to the passenger side, maintaining a distance. "License, registration, and proof of insurance," Hayes barked, directing his high-intensity flashlight directly into Arthur's eyes, intending to blind him. "Good evening, Sergeant," Arthur responded, his voice calm, deep, and commanding. "The documents are in my breast pocket and the glove compartment. May I retrieve them?" Hayes detested the voice instantly. It was articulate, educated, and utterly devoid of the fear he so relished. "Just get them." No sudden movements. Arthur deliberately retrieved his wallet and handed his driver's license through the window, followed by the insurance card. "May I inquire as to the reason for this stop?" "You were swerving all over the road," Hayes fabricated effortlessly. "Were you imbibing tonight, Arthur?" "I have not consumed any alcoholic beverages," Arthur replied with polite firmness. "And I assure you, I was maintaining my lane." "Step out of the vehicle," Hayes demanded, his temper flaring at the polite contradiction. Arthur's legal mind swiftly assessed the situation. A Terry stop necessitates reasonable, articulable suspicion. Ordering a driver from their vehicle was permissible under Pennsylvania versus Mims, but the initial stop was clearly a pretext. Nevertheless, Arthur understood that engaging in a debate about constitutional law on the side of a darkened road with an armed and aggressive individual was an exercise in futility. The courtroom was his arena. This asphalt belonged to Hayes. Arthur unfastened his seatbelt and exited the car. He smoothed his tuxedo jacket, standing at an imposing 6 feet 2 inches. Hayes took a step back, visibly perturbed by Arthur's stature and immaculate presentation. "Turn around. Place your hands on the roof of the car," Hayes ordered. He conducted a forceful pat-down of Arthur, discovering nothing. "Do you have anything illegal in the vehicle? Firearms, narcotics?" "No, I do not," Arthur stated. "And I do not consent to any searches of my automobile." Hayes smirked, a malicious gleam in his eye. "I detect the scent of marijuana. That grants me probable cause. Stand over there with my partner." "You do not smell marijuana, Sergeant," Arthur declared smoothly, maintaining his unyielding composure, "because I have never used such a substance in my life." "Are you calling me a liar?" Hayes stepped closer, intruding upon Arthur's personal space. "I am stating a factual reality," Arthur responded. Hayes was incandescent with rage. This man was not cowering. He was not pleading. He regarded Hayes not with fear, but with a chilling, analytical pity. Hayes resolved at that precise moment to obliterate him. Hayes leaned into the Mercedes. He rummaged through the center console, scattering pristine documents onto the floor. He inspected the glove compartment. Finding nothing, he reached into a specialized tactical pocket of his uniform trousers. From it, he withdrew a small, crumpled plastic baggie containing an ounce of white powder, a drop piece he kept precisely for moments when someone required a lesson. With Dunn's view obstructed by the passenger seat, Hayes tossed the baggie onto the driver's side floorboard. Then he exclaimed loudly, "Well, well, well, what have we here?" Hayes stepped back from the car, holding the baggie aloft as if it were a trophy. "Looks like a felony quantity of cocaine, Arthur. So much for never touching the substance." Arthur stared at the plastic bag. His heart pounded violently against his ribs, but his face remained a mask of stoic composure. He comprehended precisely what had just transpired. The sheer audacity of it was staggering. "That does not belong to me," Arthur stated, his voice deepening an octave, carrying the gravitas of a gavel striking wood. "You planted it." "Shut your mouth," Hayes roared, spinning Arthur around and slamming him forcefully against the side of the Mercedes. He violently wrenched Arthur's arms behind his back, tightening the steel cuffs onto his wrists with such force that circulation was immediately impeded. "You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you exercise it, you piece of garbage," Deputy Dunn observed, his stomach plummeting. He had not seen the baggie before. He knew the car smelled of expensive cologne, not narcotics. However, to speak against a senior sergeant would signal the end of his career, or worse. Dunn remained silent. The Oakhaven precinct was a hive of frantic activity. As Hayes marched Arthur through the double doors, Arthur's tuxedo was disheveled, his wrists bleeding slightly from the tight metal restraints. Yet he walked with his head held high, refusing to grant Hayes the satisfaction of witnessing his defeat. Hayes paraded him past the booking desk like a prized quarry. "Got a high roller tonight?" Hayes boasted to the desk sergeant. "Felony possession, with intent to distribute. He was cruising through our town thinking his fancy suit made him untouchable." Arthur was relieved of his possessions, fingerprinted, and placed in a stark concrete holding cell where he sat on the cold steel bench, enveloped by the pungent odor of ammonia and stale perspiration. Arthur allowed himself a brief moment of profound indignation. He had dedicated his entire existence to upholding the law, championing justice, and adjudicating cases with meticulous impartiality. To be incarcerated by a corrupt brute adorned with a badge was an affront that seared his very soul, but Arthur was a strategist. He understood that an emotional reaction was a guaranteed pathway to defeat. He needed to proceed with calculated precision. He invoked his right to legal counsel and made his single permitted telephone call to his wife, Cynthia, and his long-standing confidant and formidable defense attorney, Richard Blackwood. By 6 o'clock in the morning, the media had become aware of the arrest. Oakhaven was a modest precinct, and a name like Arthur Sterling appearing on the intake log was a lucrative opportunity for local journalists. By sunrise, the headlines screamed across local news channels and internet blogs. Federal Judge Arthur Sterling arrested in late-night drug bust. The ramifications were immediate and severe. The Federal Judicial Council convened an emergency session. By 9 o'clock in the morning, Arthur was placed on indefinite administrative leave. His chambers were sealed, and his case assignments were reassigned. 30 years of an unblemished, sterling reputation were being systematically dismantled in the court of public opinion. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Richard Blackwood arrived at the precinct. Richard was a formidable litigator, known for his unparalleled ability to dismantle opposing counsel in the courtroom. He secured Arthur's release on bail and escorted his friend past a throng of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Arthur remained silent, his expression unreadable as he entered Richard's SUV. Once they were on the highway, Richard struck the steering wheel with his fist. "Art, tell me precisely what occurred. Every word." Arthur recounted the events of the night with the clinical accuracy of someone delivering a legal brief. He described the pretextual stop, the absence of probable cause, the aggressive demeanor, and finally, the improbable materialization of the cocaine. "He planted it, Rick. I observed his shoulder dip as he reached into his vest. It was a textbook frame-up." Richard rubbed his temples. "This is grave. Arthur Hayes is a decorated veteran in Oakhaven. The prosecuting attorney, Martin Fowler, favors him because he secures convictions. It will be your word against a senior sergeant and his rookie partner. And with the media already convicting you—" Arthur turned to gaze out the window. A slow, menacing smile finally emerged, breaking through his stoic facade. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized the hunter had inadvertently stepped into a trap. "Rick," Arthur said softly, "do you recall the Lopez cartel case I presided over 2 years ago?" "Of course," Richard replied. "You received death threats. The U.S. Marshals assigned you protection for 6 months." "Precisely," Arthur confirmed. During that period, Cynthia was deeply concerned for our safety. Therefore, I had my Mercedes retrofitted. Not merely with bullet-resistant glass, Rick, I engaged a company from Langley to install a Sentinel 360 security matrix. It is a completely concealed, high-definition audio and video recording system. 4 cameras externally, 2 within the cabin, with infrared capabilities. It operates silently and synchronizes every piece of data to a secure encrypted cloud server the moment the engine is deactivated. Richard nearly slammed on the brakes. He stared at Arthur, his eyes wide. "Are you suggesting—" "I am indicating," Arthur stated, his voice resonating with an absolute authority that confirmed Mitchell Hayes' entire illegal search, his planting of the narcotics, and every malicious word he uttered had been recorded in crystal-clear 4K resolution and studio-quality audio. He missed the lenses because they are ingeniously integrated into the rear-view mirror, housing, and the dome lights. A terrifyingly joyful laugh erupted from Richard's chest. "We've got him, Art. We have this scoundrel dead to rights. I'll contact the district attorney immediately and have this dismissed by noon." "No," Arthur commanded, his sharpness making Richard flinch. "No," Arthur reiterated, his eyes cold and calculating. "If we present the recording now, the DA will quietly drop the charges. Hayes will receive a minor reprimand, perhaps early retirement, and the department will sweep it under the rug. He will continue to ruin other people's lives. People who lack our resources, people who do not possess sophisticated surveillance systems." Arthur leaned forward. "We will allow him to dig his own grave. We will permit him to submit his official, sworn police report. We will let him testify at the preliminary hearing, subject to the penalties of perjury. We will enable him to entrench himself in his falsehood so firmly that even the police union cannot shield him." For the subsequent 3 weeks, Arthur endured a period of intense hardship. The media relentlessly tarnished his reputation. Pundits questioned his past judicial decisions, speculating whether his rulings had been compromised by a clandestine addiction. Meanwhile, Hayes conducted himself as though he were on a triumphant parade. He issued anonymous statements to the press regarding the arrogance of privileged individuals who needed to learn respect for the law. He formally submitted his police report, detailing how he had detected cocaine, an impossibility in the circumstances, observed Arthur behaving erratically, and discovered the contraband in plain sight on the floorboard. Finally, the day of the preliminary hearing arrived. The courtroom was packed to capacity with journalists, inquisitive legal professionals, and local residents. Arthur sat at the defense table beside Richard, impeccably attired in a charcoal pinstriped suit. Sergeant Mitchell Hayes took the witness stand, raising his right hand and swearing to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He cast a gaze of absolute contempt upon Arthur, completely unaware that he had just strapped himself into an electric chair and handed the judge the switch. The atmosphere within the courtroom was thick with anticipation. District Attorney Martin Fowler, a man who had built his career on the straightforward convictions secured by Oak Haven's assertive police force, paced confidently before the witness stand. In the gallery, reporters leaned forward, pens poised above their notepads. "Sergeant Hayes," Fowler began, his voice projecting across the silent room, "could you detail for the court precisely what you observed on the night of October 14th? Hayes settled back, appearing entirely at ease in his crisply pressed dress uniform. "I observed a blue Mercedes-Benz S-Class swerving erratically, crossing the double yellow line on 2 occasions. Upon initiating a traffic stop, I approached the vehicle and immediately detected a distinct, strong odor of raw marijuana, which provided me with probable cause to search the vehicle." Fowler nodded encouragingly. "And upon searching the vehicle, what did you discover?" I found a plastic baggie containing approximately 1 ounce of a white powdery substance. It later field tested positive for cocaine. It was in plain view on the driver's side floorboard. Hayes lied smoothly, without even a flicker of his eyelids. The defendant was highly uncooperative and aggressive, necessitating the application of mechanical restraints. Fowler turned to the presiding judge, the Honorable Harrison Caldwell, a no-nonsense jurist who had known Arthur Sterling for 2 decades and was clearly distressed by the proceedings. "Nothing further, Your Honor." Richard Blackwood stood, buttoning his suit jacket. He carried no legal pad. He required no notes. He walked deliberately toward the witness stand, his eyes fixed on Hayes as a hawk observes a field mouse. "Sergeant Hayes," Richard's voice was dangerously quiet, "you testified under oath that my client was swerving. Are you absolutely certain?" "Yes," Hayes replied firmly. "You also testified that you smelled marijuana, a strong odor. Correct." "That is correct." "Did you find any marijuana in the vehicle?" "No, sir, but the odor was present." Richard smiled, a tight, unsettling expression. "Sergeant, you stated the cocaine was in plain view. However, your official police report indicates that you had to search the center console first. Which is the accurate account?" Hayes shifted slightly, a hint of annoyance crossing his features. "I searched the console, then noticed the baggie on the floorboard." "I see," Richard said. He turned to Judge Caldwell. "Your Honor, the defense would like to introduce Exhibit A into evidence. It is a digital video and audio file, time-stamped and geolocated to the exact moment of the traffic stop." Fowler leaped to his feet. "Objection. The prosecution was not provided with any such video during discovery," Richard countered, his voice echoing off the mahogany paneling. "It is being submitted strictly as impeachment evidence to demonstrate that the state's primary witness is currently committing blatant perjury on the stand." Judge Caldwell's eyebrows shot upward. He leaned over the bench. "I will permit it. Play the video, Mr. Blackwood." A large monitor was wheeled to the center of the courtroom. Richard pressed play on his laptop. The screen flickered to life in stunning 4K resolution, depicting the pitch-black suburban street. The courtroom watched as Arthur's Mercedes navigated a perfectly straight, unwavering course. No swerving, no crossing the yellow line. Then the flashing lights appeared. The audio engaged with crystal clarity. "Quiet night, Mitch." The voice of Deputy Tyler Dunn resonated through the courtroom. "Too quiet means the undesirables are lurking where they don't belong." The courtroom collectively gasped, but this was merely the prelude. The video transitioned to the interior cabin cameras as Hayes approached. The court heard Arthur's polite, measured tones. They witnessed Hayes aggressively blinding him with the flashlight. Then came the moment that irrevocably altered Mitchell Hayes' life. The interior camera flawlessly captured Hayes leaning into the empty vehicle. It recorded his sneer, and in horrifyingly clear detail, it captured Hayes reaching into his own tactical trousers, extracting a baggie of white powder, and depositing it onto the floorboard. "Well, well, well, what have we here?" The digitized voice of Hayes sneered from the speakers. The courtroom dissolved into absolute pandemonium. Reporters shouted, scrambling for the exits to broadcast the breaking news. District Attorney Fowler visibly slumped into his chair, his face entirely devoid of color. He stared at his star witness with unadulterated horror. On the stand, Mitchell Hayes appeared as if he had been struck by lightning. His arrogant posture dissolved, replaced by the pale, trembling realization of a cornered animal. He looked at Arthur Sterling. Arthur was looking directly back at him, his face an impenetrable mask of unwavering justice. Judge Caldwell slammed his gavel down with such force that the handle nearly fractured. "Order! Order in my courtroom!" he roared, his face purple with fury. He turned his furious gaze upon Hayes. "Sergeant Hayes, you have disgraced that badge. You have disgraced this court, and you have committed egregious perjury." Caldwell pointed a trembling finger at the bailiffs. "Take this man into custody immediately. Bail is denied." The downfall of Mitchell Hayes was absolute and merciless. Within 48 hours, the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Civil Rights Division descended upon Oak Haven. Special Agent Thomas Ridge spearheaded an investigation that systematically dismantled the precinct down to its very foundations. Faced with a federal indictment, Deputy Tyler Dunn immediately cooperated with the prosecution, testifying that Hayes routinely targeted minorities and carried drop pieces to fabricate arrests. Dunn avoided incarceration, but was permanently stripped of his law enforcement certification. Sterling, fully absolved, returned to his private quarters not as a disgraced individual, but as a celebrated national icon. Yet his mission was far from complete. While the judicial system was addressing Hayes' transgressions, Arthur possessed an astute understanding of how municipalities and financial matters operated. Arthur, with Richard Blackwood acting as his counsel, initiated a monumental civil rights action, citing Section 1983 of Title 42 of the United States Code against Oak Haven County, its sheriff's department, and specifically against Mitchell Hayes. Their claims encompassed malicious prosecution, unlawful detainment, deliberate infliction of severe emotional distress, and flagrant infringements upon the 4th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution. The legal representatives for Oak Haven County attempted to negotiate a quiet resolution proposing $2 million. Richard Blackwood summarily dismissed their offer with derision. The overwhelming public scrutiny, coupled with the irrefutable video evidence, rendered a jury trial an existential threat, one that could potentially lead to the financial ruin of the entire county. Following 6 arduous months of deliberations, Oak Haven County capitulated. They agreed to an unprecedented settlement amounting to $28 million. Furthermore, this agreement stipulated a legally enforceable consent decree mandating federal oversight for the Oak Haven Sheriff's Department, requiring body cameras for all sworn officers and subjecting their traffic stop procedures to independent evaluations for the subsequent 10 years. As for Mitchell Hayes, the very legal framework he had so long exploited ultimately led to his downfall. He faced federal charges including deprivation of rights under color of law, obstruction of justice, and numerous counts of perjury. Divested of his police union protections and abandoned by his former comrades, Hayes stood before a federal judge, a judge who held a position comparable to Arthur Sterling's standing. Hayes visibly wept during his sentencing, pleading for clemency and attributing his misguided actions to the immense pressures of his profession, which he claimed had impaired his judgment. The judge remained resolute. Mitchell Hayes received a sentence of 25 years in federal penitentiary. Devoid of any possibility for early release, he was confined to a maximum security facility, placed in protective custody, akin to a trapped creature within the very system he once wielded to intimidate others. Arthur, however, did not personally retain the $28 million. He established trust funds for his grandchildren and allocated the remainder to the creation of the Sterling Justice Initiative, a substantially funded legal defense organization devoted exclusively to providing exceptional legal representation for underprivileged individuals who had fallen victim to misconduct by law enforcement. He transformed a terrifying and deeply humiliating ordeal into a formidable instrument designed to safeguard the vulnerable for generations to come. The predator had mistakenly targeted the wrong victim, and the scales of justice had finally found their equilibrium. If you found satisfaction in witnessing this arrogant, corrupt sergeant receive the just deserts he so richly deserved, please express your approval by clicking the like button and sharing this remarkable narrative of retribution. Remember to subscribe and activate notifications to ensure you never miss our daily true crime and vindication stories. In your estimation, what course of action would you have taken had you been in the judge's position? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and we eagerly anticipate our next encounter.